Welcome back to The Burn. I am Ryan Van Deaver, and we are presented to you by Hot Zone Sports. The information that you need to know, built with you in mind, for the people, by the people, and with the people. Join the Hot Zone Sports community today. Remember, our show is wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. So if you could rate and review us, we would really appreciate it. If you are watching on YouTube, first off, congratulations to you. Secondly, subscribe to the show and hit that notification button so you will always know when the content drops. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And wherever you like to social media, we are there. That's right. You can find us at Hot Zone Sports. Just look for the logo. On today's show, we're going to go over the college football playoff final rankings, as well as do a recap of all of the conference championship games. And if you didn't notice, we have a special guest with us today. Go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Yes, hello. My name's Gabriel. Appreciate that intro. I'm excited to be here on Hot Zone Sports. And I'm so lucky that we got this day. We get to talk college football, maybe a little NFL. I'm with it. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you can find him on Twitter. Is there any other social media that you're on, man?
All the social medias, Curious Sports Post. When you asked me to introduce myself, I did a horrible job, but I just wanted to talk sports with you. So thank you for giving me a second to do over. Curious Sports Post on all of the social medias, on the X at Sports Post 100.
All right, sounds good, man. So the official college football playoff bracket was released today, and good God, do we have one hellacious issue. Now, I'm just going to go over the college football schedule with you first. You got number 7 Notre Dame versus number 10 Indiana, the battle for Indiana. And that is going to be Friday, December 20th at 7 p.m. on ESPN. A quick little note here. This is going to be the first time that Notre Dame is not on NBC when it comes to a bowl game. Little tidbit there I found interesting. I'm a Notre Dame guy. Hate if you want. I don't care. Next up is going to be number 6 Penn State versus SMU. Yes, they got in. That is going to be Saturday, December 21st at 11 p.m. Wow. They scheduled that for 11 p.m. Next up is going to be number 5 Texas versus number 12 Clemson. That is going to be Saturday, December 21st at 3 p.m. Number 8 Ohio State versus number 9 Tennessee. That is probably going to be the matchup of the weekend. All because the winner of this game is going to face off against the Oregon Ducks. And that is set for Saturday, December 21st at 7 p.m. Yeah, SMU is in. Obviously, Alabama is out. The first 2 teams out were Alabama and Miami. Yeah, who do you think deserved to get in? SMU or Alabama?
Listen, I took to the X, and my post said something to the effect of, "Rejoice! They did the right thing. Well done." And that was met with certain people who were upset, but that's fine. Let's start with this. There were 3 very flawed resumes either way. So did they get it right? Did they get it wrong? I don't really care. If you're Alabama, you can't lose to Oklahoma the way you did. That just can't happen. And then if you look at how Oklahoma then finished their season from there, I'm sorry. You don't get too much sympathy from me. And then on the Miami side, listen, I went to Syracuse. You shouldn't have lost to that Syracuse team. I'm just gonna tell. I know Kyle McCord is, whatever. Ohio State's a nice story. No. So you should have just won those 2 games, and we're not having this conversation. I'm totally fine to let the team in that lost by a combined 6 points. Totally fine with it.
Yeah. Well, I think SMU should have been in, but let's go over. Let's do what every network has been doing: the strength of record rank, strength of schedule rank, win-loss record of teams over 500. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, strength of record rank: Alabama 9th, SMU 15th. All right. we're right there. Strength of schedule rank is where it gets weird. Alabama 16th. Obviously, you play in the SEC. SMU 60th. All right? That's going to make sense because, SMU and Clemson, they both didn't play all the top teams in the ACC. So that's going to be skewed. Win-loss record of teams over 500. Alabama 5-1, SMU 5-2. There is no right answer here. There is downside to both teams, upside to both teams. If you put these two schedules together and compare the SEC to the ACC, Bama is obviously going to have the upper hand here. Losing to Vandy and getting blasted by Oklahoma did Alabama no favors and ultimately did them in. You have SMU, who was ranked 3 spots ahead of Alabama during the past week's rankings, and they lost on a last-second field goal, where Alabama got destroyed by Oklahoma in their last loss. But let's say hypothetically that Alabama is put in the college football playoff over SMU. Then you're proving to the entire world that you're not playing in a conference championship doesn't matter for anything. Or putting SMU in tells all of the college football world that having the strength of schedule that is ranked number 60 means nothing. And not having a top 25 win on your schedule doesn't carry any weight anymore. Alabama, SMU was a catch-22 decision.
Example.
The committee just went with the most justifiable decision that they could go with. Strength of schedule should matter when it comes to these metrics. Otherwise, you are proving to other teams that you shouldn't schedule a Notre Dame, a Texas, a Oregon, a Ohio State, so on and so forth. These metrics should matter, but they don't. What incentive are you giving these teams to play top-tier teams when you're penalizing them for losses? But not like in Indiana, who didn't have a great strength of schedule. They only played Ohio State. They didn't play Oregon or Penn State compared to Ohio State, who are in the same conference. Push is going to come to shove, and there are going to be guidelines implemented, not by computer. We've gone down that road before.
I thought the computers nailed it every step of the way. Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't love though what Nick Saban, his reaction to this right after the fact. And it was essentially something to the effect of him sticking up for Alabama. And I totally get that. Fair enough. You know, if my team was in there, team on my head, if it's them on the way out, you bet I'm saying I will happily contradict myself to make sure Nebraska gets to the playoff when that time comes. I will happily do that. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but but either way, kidding aside, now you should always make an argument so that what you're pushing for can hold true and is the right thing, regardless of what the logo is. And so I didn't like that he's saying, well, maybe now the athletic directors are going to go and cancel the harder games. Why would you say that? Why would you even put that out there? That's such a bad thing for the entire product. Is it, again, Alabama, should they have been in? Shouldn't they? Whatever, maybe. Ultimately, it was their SEC game that determined that they couldn't be in Oklahoma.
Yeah. Now, I will say one little thing, because anybody that watches the podcast knows that I was all over South Carolina's nuts, okay? They beat Clemson, who ended up winning the ACC championship with the same record, mind you. They get a bye in the college football playoff. And South Carolina, who beat 4 ranked teams in the final 6 weeks, they got left out of the college football. That's really all I'm going to say about it.
Interesting.
The question for you right now is, does the NCAA need to get rid of the auto bids? You have number 9 Boise State and number 12 Arizona State both getting buys, while Georgia and Oregon are number 1 and number 2. Obviously, they should receive buys. Should they get rid of auto bids?
I think so, because you're not getting the best 4 teams in the nation that then have the bid, and so now we're stuck with, should Georgia probably have gotten an auto bid in and get a bye? Probably. I don't know. It's a flawed system either way. Here's what I'd be in favor of, and I don't want to expand it any further.
No.
I'd be okay with them expanding it to 16 and no one gets a bye. But
Yeah.
I don't like the auto bid because of kind of the similar things that you're saying. So I love Boise State, I love Arizona State, I love the story. I don't know if they were more deserving of than say a Tennessee or a Texas. I don't know.
Yeah, it's usually in most leagues like the NFL. Okay, in the NFL, you play your division teams twice, right? And then you're assigned. Okay, you go play the AFC is going to go play the AFC North, right? And then the best record that comes out of that, hey, you either get a wild card spot, you win your conference, you go in the playoffs. You might get a bye. The best record gets a bye, but that is not how this is working. You have a number 9 team and a number 12 team receiving auto bids and getting buys out of the whole mess. It makes you wonder if
Right.
teams are going to stop scheduling these tough teams during the season. Not to mention that I believe that the seeding needs to be reassessed here. The number
Yes.
5 seed has the easiest path if you actually look at it. Not the number 1 or the number 2 seed, which when it comes to March Madness, that's the way it usually is,
Mhm.
unless number 1 or 2 seed just flops against a 16 or 15 seed. But I digress. But you look at Oregon, for instance, number 1 team in the nation. They're going to have to play Tennessee or Ohio State in the
Mhm.
quarterfinals. Then you have number 5 seed Texas. They play Clemson. Sorry, Clemson. You're not that great, okay? And you may well beat Texas. I'm not saying you won't. We will do those predictions here probably next week somehow. But then Texas is going to play probably Arizona. They're going to play Arizona State in the quarterfinals. The committee is going to have to do something. They're going to have to go back to the drawing board when it comes to these parameters for the seeding because it's downright freaking laughable at this point.
I don't get why it's stuck in stone anyway. Why wouldn't you just have it however it shakes up, whoever wins whatever matchups, then, one plays the lowest seed, two plays the second, etc. I don't understand why we're doing this goofy system anyway in the first place, especially when it's all set where they're going to be. So I don't get it at all, Ryan. I really don't. But
Yeah.
I'm sure they will not change this aspect of it. But I'm very positive. Now, I said the 16 team in response to your question. Do I necessarily want them to expand it even more? No, but I'm sure we're closer to getting a 32 team tournament or a 64 team tournament than we are them fixing this aspect. That I know.
Yeah. Oh, hey, look. Hey, audience, you can actually see me now. I found my settings in my computer. That's awesome. No. Jesus. Looked like I was in a dark room. I got like 4 freaking lights on in here, okay? Don't judge me. But honestly, there is a possibility that these conferences were in Indiana, like I said earlier, they didn't play Penn State or Oregon, or in the ACC where Clemson and SMU didn't play their best teams in their
Hmm.
conference, which, I mean, okay, the ACC, I get it. They only have 4 good teams. 5 if Florida State is actually playing up to their caliber, but they obviously didn't know where a football field was this season. I'm going to get off topic if I start talking about them again. But maybe you really need to start playing 10 conference games instead of 8 to give these teams an opportunity to play the top of the conference, because in the SEC, and I know the SEC is going to hate this idea to the oblivion, but the fact is this, okay? Ole Miss, you lost to Kentucky. Lane Kiffin, I love you. I love your charisma. I think you're an all right coach, but the
Mm.
the bottom line is this. You lost to Kentucky. You should have been nowhere near the freaking college football playoff. I don't give a shit what teams you beat to be where you're at, but you lost to a 5-6 Florida team and then a Kentucky team that ended up being complete dog shit the rest of the year. So you try to explain that loss for me. You can't. You didn't come to play. You shouldn't be in the college football playoff. Bottom line.
And I already know what they're gonna say because I've already had this tete-a-tete. That's French, Ryan, for fisticuffs. But we already had this discussion, and I'm told that it's just too much of a gauntlet. The SEC is too much of a gauntlet. We couldn't possibly add another conference game, so we have to play Mercer in November.
Yes.
No, no, you don't. Why aren't we having even schedules? Right, so the Big Ten gets their act together. They're not scheduling the Citadel in the middle of November, and that's they're doing moves to improve the conference, improve the scheduling.
Yeah.
ACC, they get their act together. They're not going to now go out and say, "Oh, because we have more good teams, now we get to schedule UConn, the football team, not the basketball team." So
Yeah.
I don't understand that argument at all. It's completely nonsensical, Ryan.
Well, my biggest problem with that non-conference, okay, and I said it on my last podcast, I solemnly believe that the SEC needs to play like the Big Ten or the Big 12. This is how that I get it. UMass, Northern Illinois, the Citadel, when Georgia or Ole Miss or whatever team comes to play this team, you know, the team Citadel, Northern Illinois, whatever team you want to rattle off, or North Dakota State, whatever, that is basically their payday. So that is what is
Yeah.
going to stop this whole thing from happening. But the bottom line is, if there is going to be a committee every single year, we're going to have to make it completely obvious as to what team should be in, and there should be no confusion whatsoever. So in week 11, Oklahoma goes, let's say Oklahoma's ranked 7th in the country, and they go and play Nebraska. Thanks for wearing the Nebraska hat. You just gave me a team. Say they go play Nebraska, who is ranked number 15 in the nation. And those teams, at the end of the season, they're supposed to be two of the top teams that are getting in the college football playoff. Well, now you have a determining factor as to which one should go in, instead of sitting in a room full of 20 TVs trying to find out, well, Alabama really looked good when Jalen Milroe came to play, but he didn't play very well when he played good competition. But he also lost to Vandy. It's just, there's so many different determining scenarios that can happen. It's just like, I don't think the committee really knows. And at this point in time, I think they picked SMU just because they played in their championship game and they lost on a last-second field goal.
Right. Yeah, and I think they've made that clear that had it stuck the way it was looking like it would be that first half, then Alabama would have gotten the nod, and you wouldn't have gotten too much of an argument from me. Because
Yeah.
SMU made it a game, it took, what was it, a 56-yarder? That's what did it for me. I will say what your solution there is, that provides us a data point that then gives us a commonplace, something that we can actually use as a barometer instead of this silly thing. Well, who's actually better? Alabama getting waxing a Vanderbilt team by 40, or Ohio State beating up on Purdue by 35? Which one should we hold? It gets rid of all that silliness and all that nonsense. I like that a lot, Ryan.
Yeah. And, it's just, it's a crazy thing. There's always going to be people complaining, whether you go from 12 teams to 16 teams, because look at March Madness. You're at 68 teams, and there's still teams that complain that they didn't get in. I mean, this is always going to happen. And for me, a sports content creator, thank you for providing this for me, NCAA, because we are always constantly judging how dumb as hell you are.
Oh, it's great.
But the last point I'm going to make on this is, I was watching the selection show today, and Kirk Herbstreit brought up a good point. Playing off of my SEC needs to play Big Ten, all that stuff. But the people that make up all of these schedules, okay, so from my knowledge, I know that the SEC comes up with their own schedules. It's not like college football 25 video game where you can come up with your own schedule. Okay. But I think there needs to be a committee that comes up with these schedules all in one room, comes up with the entire schedule. And I know the Big 12, the Big 10, the the MWC, all of these conferences are going to hate that, but that's really what it's going to have to come down to. Or the SEC is going to have to sit in a room with the Big 12 and say, okay, on week 13, we want to play Oklahoma State. That way, you're not playing the Citadel, Northern Illinois. You're not playing these cupcake teams, because really, if you look at Alabama, when they had to play Mercer, they needed another win, and not a cupcake win. They needed another win. If they would have played, let's say, Kansas State or BYU, do you think they would have actually gotten into the college football playoff?
Instead of playing one of those teams, honestly, Alabama was so up and down this year. I think
Yeah.
they get another loss.
They might have. But if they would have won one of those games instead of playing Mercer, I think, like you said, it would have been another data point, and they would have been able to say to the committee, okay, we have been up and down all year, but we're playing like this right now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I
don't
see
know.
my fault. I see what you're saying now. Instead of putting in a Kansas State instead of a Mercer, then it kind of evens out the Oklahoma. I see.
Yeah.
I like that. Mm.
There's many directions they can go with this, but the bottom line is you got 4 Big Ten teams in, 3 SEC teams. Should have been 4. I know, guys. You got two ACC teams, 1 Big 12 team, which that makes sense. I'm sorry, you can't put in another team. Like, say you have Iowa State. Well, they got sandblasted, so there shouldn't have been another Big 12 team in. And I'm a Big 12 guy, but facts are facts. You got 1 Mountain West team, and then you got the 1 independent. And I'm just going to tell you this. Notre Dame is not going to go into a conference anytime soon. It's not going to happen. Notre Dame would have way too much to lose, not to mention their NBC deal, because their NBC deal is based off of them being an independent. And I don't know the actual financials of it, but I can tell you it's a lot of money. And they would be losing, let's say, probably the most logical decision would them be going into the Big Ten, right? When it comes to location wise and whatnot. But it doesn't make any sense. They're going to lose way too much money. And then you're going to tell them, okay, let's say a schedule. You're going to play Penn State, you're going to play Oregon, and then you're going to play Indiana. Yes, it would ramp up that conference, to be able to give you another data point, but I just don't see it happening because...
Wait, who's pushing for this?
Oh, dude. It's been all over the place. Yeah. Everybody wants it to happen.
Why?
It's just because they had... Okay, so Notre Dame's best win this season was against Texas A&M. Their second best win this season was Louisville. And that's not a great win. I think they ended up finishing, 500. I could be wrong on that. It could be one game under 500, but it wasn't a great win. And then, of course, you have the Northern Illinois thing, but I really don't care what you have to say about Northern Illinois, right? Northern Illinois, I looked it up today. They have the 7th best defense in the nation. So y'all can shut up. I'm done. Okay? Notre Dame has rattled off 10 straight wins after that. That's all they had to do.
The first game. That was the first game too. I'm willing to give... I think you should judge the entirety of the season.
Yeah.
I am willing to give team that leeway to grow within the season. I think it's a little unfair to be too harsh about something that happened in early September. So
Yeah,
that's just me.
with those teams and man, those fans, they really like to dig in on Notre Dame. And I am probably the most logical Notre Dame fan you're ever going to run into. But all right, told myself I wasn't going to talk about Notre Dame, but here I am. But man, I have to say it, for the first time in probably a long time, I am actually excited about this college football playoff. It's 12-team college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's not perfect like many things in life, and it can be improved just like many things in life. But what we have going on starting, December 20th? Yeah, that's going to be awesome. But let's go ahead and recap some of these games over the weekend. Um, a lot of these games, they're really hard to watch, but we're going to go over them anyway and give you the recap that you deserve. The first game of the weekend was on Friday, and that was UNLV versus Boise State. And Boise State was favored by 4. They ended up covering. They ended up winning 21-7. Ashton Jeanty again ran for over 200 yards, 209 to be exact, and a touchdown. And Boise State earned their college football playoff spot, beating UNLV. They won their second straight Mountain West title. Jeanty, who has had the spotlight to himself to make his Heisman case, didn't disappoint, ripping off a 75-yard touchdown run. It was his 5th touchdown run of 70 yards or more this season, tying LaDainian Tomlinson's FBS season record. Another thing, Jeanty also surpassed 1981 Heisman winner Marcus Allen of USC to move into 4th place on the FBS rushing list and needs 132 more to pass record holder Barry Sanders of Oklahoma State. I know. Asterisk. I get it. He's played more games. But I was actually impressed with the Boise State defense, and they are not ranked in the top 50. UNLV entered the game 7th nationally in scoring offense, averaging 38.7 points per game. They hadn't been held below 23 this season. So a lot of fans who don't watch Boise State, and a lot of fans actually watch Boise State for one player, Jeanty, of course, they didn't realize that their defense isn't that great. I mean, not top 50. So to shut down this UNLV team the way they did just really impressed me. They had the Boise State defense piled up 11 tackles for loss and 6 sacks. UNLV wasn't going to get anything rolling in this game.
Oh, and Malik Williams, he's someone that's pretty hard to game plan for. He's someone who, capable passer, but can really hurt you with his legs. So really
Yep.
good dual threat. And like you nailed it right there in terms of how Boise State was able to be the attacking force on defense. That's really what gave them that cushion. And then you go on the other side. I thought Maddox Madison had himself a good game, couple nice throws. But when you have when you have Ashton Jeanty, you can ball him up. I liken him to Saquon Barkley. You can ball him up for 20 carries. He's gonna break that 21st, and then it's game over.
Yep, pretty much. But what's crazy about this game is reading, what UNLV was actually doing to try and stop Jeanty. They were loading the box with 8 or 9 defenders early in the game, and they quickly found out that Boise State has a quarterback. Madsen completed 6 of his first 7 passes, including a 22-yard scoring strike to Latrell Caples for a 7-0 lead, and then they basically threw that game plan out the window, and that was basically the beginning of the end. UNLV, they just scored that one touchdown towards the end of the game.
Yeah, it didn't feel close. I know the score indicates that it was close, within 14. But like you said, comes at the end, and it really felt like Boise State had control of this game. So,
Yeah.
but on the UNLV side, they're losing Barry Odom. He's off to Purdue now. So we got to see. We all know what happened in the beginning of the year with that quarterback and the running back. Now you're at UNLV. You're losing your head coach. So I thought they had a good year in Mountain West this year. Let's see how they look next year.
All right. So next game we're going to be talking about is Iowa State and Arizona State. I mean, there really wasn't much of a matchup. I mean, it was 7-3 early in the first quarter. I said, okay, we might have something here. And then the floodgates opened up. As you know, I predicted Arizona State to win this game solely because of Cam Scatterbu, but Arizona State scored 35 straight points over the second and third quarters to turn the game into a rout thanks to 3 straight Iowa State turnovers. Each of Arizona State's 3 third-quarter touchdowns came off of a turnover. That is the beginning of a disaster right there. Scatterbu, of course, he was the key player of this game. I knew it was going to come down to if Iowa State could stop him. And for many people that have watched Big 12 football, you know that Iowa State cannot stop anything when it comes to the run. That is the biggest thing they've struggled with all season long. And, well, if a leopard has spots, a leopard has spots. And Scatterbu, he ran all over this Iowa State defense, 16 carries, 170 yards, and 3 total touchdowns. He actually opened the game with a 28-yard run and also had a 53-yard carry against Iowa State's defense that had struggled in this game. Like, struggle, there needs to be a different word for this because this was not a struggle. This was just an absolute massacre. But I got to give it to Kenny Dillingham. It was a remarkable turnaround this season. This was his second season. And for all of the people that think he's going to leave Tempe, I'm going to tell you, you're wrong. He's not going to leave his alma mater this fast. He wants to build this team up. So he's going to be sticking around. So Ohio State fans know he's not going to Ohio State. Dillingham, a lot of people don't know, he was a former offensive coordinator for Oregon. And he was hired after Herm Edwards' debacle. And it's just one hell of a turnaround up to this point, and should be named Coach of the Year because of what he's done for this team and university. This team was selected dead last in the preseason Big 12 rankings. Like, what do you have to say, man?
No, and they started off 3-3 in conference play with Kenny Dillingham. And remember, there was that one tirade. I forget after which game, but there's that one tirade where they're even, hey, if you're a kicker and you're on campus, come try out for the team. We need a kicker. So it was bad at one point, but he turned it around. This is a team that's been getting better too throughout the course of the year. I liked how they limited Iowa on offense, or how they limited Iowa defensively from their perspective. And then I thought Sam Levin had himself a nice game too. He's someone where I would say you don't want him throwing in the upper 20s or the 30s in terms of pass attempts, but limited, lean on the run game, lean on Cam Scatterbu. I think you have a player in Sam Levitt, and Michigan State, they're maybe missing him a little bit.
But here's the thing with Sam Levitt, like he came out of the dumpster and just performed this year. Here's another transfer, so I really do not like this whole transfer era because say this guy has a good season and Ohio State isn't satisfied with what they have in their quarterback room. Just like last year, they went out and got Will Howard. What's to say they won't come out and get Sam Levitt? Like, you never know what's going to happen with this whole transfer / NIL era. It's just wild.
Yeah, there needs to be some sort of gate or rules, parameters, something of that sort. But yeah, because every time you allegedly you only get one transfer, and I see Buddy's name in the transfer portal 4 or 5 times before he moves on. So I don't know what's going on there.
I think the NCAA likes to sweep some stuff under the rug. I think that's how that works out. Let's go on and move to Clemson and SMU. SMU was favored by 2.5. So if you betted on Clemson over the weekend, congratulations to you. I won't say you got the bag because I don't know how much you betted. You could have bet $5. I don't know. But Nolan Hauser's 56-yard field goal as time expired lifted number 17 Clemson to that 34-31 win over number 8 SMU in the ACC championship game. With the win, Clemson shook up the college football playoff standings by earning an automatic berth into the playoff as a conference champion. What's crazy is SMU tied the game with 16 seconds left in regulation when Kevin Jennings hit Roderick Daniels Jr. on an out route for a 4-yard touchdown. The play was reviewed, but Daniels clearly dragged that right foot, and boy, that was close. I thought for sure at this point in the game, we were headed into overtime. Silly me. Didn't happen because there was a 41-yard return by Austin Randall that gave Clemson an opportunity for one play to get in field goal range, and Cade Klubnik's 17-yard pass to Antonio Williams accomplished that objective. What a comeback for SMU, though. You cannot disregard what happened because early in the game, they looked like they didn't even belong in the championship game. But they clawed and they scratched back into this game. So to go down 17 in the second half to tie it up in hopes of getting the game into overtime. In the beginning of the game, I don't know. It could have been nerves. It could have been preparation. It could have been a number of things. But after this game, I tweeted that SMU deserves to be in the college football playoff. And I still believe that. Sorry, Alabama fans. This is the way it's going to roll. And we both have arguments. I get it. But your arguments are invalid because it's in the past. So, sorry.
I wish I could use that for every argument I'm in. Like, but no, I love this game. Can I tell you how badly I was rooting for overtime? Can I tell you this? I wanted it so badly, but that kickoff return just it set them up, and then they get the completion, and I mean, Buddy makes I forget if it was 56 or 58 yarder, whatever it was. It looked good. It looked pretty good. So credit to Clemson. Dabo Swinney. Now he's someone who very much he doesn't want to use the transfer portal,
Right.
and he was under a lot of he was under fire a bit. People were saying, has he lost his touch? Does he need to adjust? But he stuck true to his guns. So even though I was enjoying the hate watch, I was rooting for SMU harder than anyone else. I have to set that aside and give credit to Dabo Swinney. He's doing it his way. Shout Frank Sinatra, and he won the ACC championship. Good for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how repeatable this is going to be. This isn't exactly a formula for success with Clemson. He's one of the few coaches that has actually been able to do this. I mean, Mike Gundy. I haven't seen an update on him, but he's against NIL. He's against the transfer portal. So you really have to. If you're not bringing in guys to just add depth and improve the position, it's not going to be a good formula of success. But what I will say is, Dabo Swinney, hey, you got another year under your belt, but I don't know how much longer it's going to be able to last for you, buddy.
Replace Cade Klubnik. I think you're fine if you get in the transfer portal for a quarterback, Dabo, and you'll be fine. Just do it once.
It just once. I don't know. It's like a drug. You do it once. I
Yep.
think he's going to want to do it for every position after, and that's what he's afraid of. Oh, my
Maybe.
gosh. All right, next up is Georgia and Texas. Yeah. Texas had to reduce their turnovers against Georgia. I said it in the last podcast. And in this game, in order to end up on top, it didn't happen. They ended up with 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble. So it was -1 differential. But that wasn't the story of the game. It was the 11 penalties for 94 yards. In their last matchup, Georgia scored 30 points on 258 total yards. But this was a little bit different. What Texas was hoping for was to come out with their running game, and that didn't exactly pan out. Texas knew it was going to be a challenge, but 51 yards on 19 carries and a 2.7 yard per carry clip isn't exactly what they expected out of Trey Wisner, coming off of a 186-yard game in their last matchup against Texas A&M. But Texas A&M's defense has been elite this season. Easily the strength of this team. Texas has the number 2 defense in the nation. But in this game, they gave up 141 rushing yards, which was a bit over their average of 103 rushing yards per game. They gave up 136 passing yards, which was under their 147 passing yards per game that they usually give up. But Georgia they have been a second half team all season long. So when the game went in at half, tied at 6, we kind of figured that there were going to be some points scored in the second half, but we didn't exactly expect Carson Beck to be injured on the last play of the first half and have Gunnar Stockton come into the game and go 12 for 16 for 71 yards. Yes, only 71 yards. It's okay. Yes, he threw a pick, but for him to come into the game cold like that and defeat Texas in the SEC championship, that's impressive.
Yeah, this was another failed hate watch. I was really enjoying it. I was really enjoying it at first, but your enemies let you down at times. It's fine. But kidding aside, I saw some bitter FSU fans, and they were saying, "Oh, because Carson Beck is injured and there isn't an update there, so Georgia's out of the playoffs now, right?" And to them, I would say, "Well, no, that's a silly argument." And the reason being is because I haven't liked Carson Beck for most of the year, and I like Gunnar Stockton slightly more. And I'm going to say this Georgia offense actually ran better with Gunnar Stockton. And then on the flip side, I think I'll like the Texas offense better with Arch Manning than Quinn Ewers. I mean, I love how talented he can be. Hate the turnovers. So I don't know. Both limited offensively. The battle of the trenches was fun to watch. You gotta give kudos to Texas there. And so we'll see. We'll see. They might prove me wrong, but I'm not expecting either of these two to be left standing at the end.
No. I mean, we knew that coming into this game that the team that limited their turnovers and just got somewhat of a running game going was going to win this game. Well, as you saw, Georgia won the turnover battle, and ETN rushed for 94 yards. And that is really what it came down to. But don't worry, Texas Longhorns fans, you are in the playoff. But at what point are you going to give up on Quinn Ewers and just say, all right, it's Arch Manning time. It's time for him to get that experience. Because Quinn Ewers, I'm sorry, if you look at the box score, okay, yeah, he was good. But if you actually watch the game, just like any game, it just wasn't good.
No.
One pick, you could say wasn't his fault, but he was the one that put his wide receiver in that position. Okay? He was the one that got the ball tipped. So that's on him. Both of these picks are on him. He needs to stop pressing. There's time left in the game. And yes, he was solid, but it wasn't good enough, especially when you're only getting 51 yards rushing from your running back. You're going to have something more explosive. You saw you were standing in that backfield like a statue. Like he was Joe Flacco from the Indianapolis Colts, just a statue back there. You put Arch Manning in there, you got a dual threat in there that other teams have to worry about defensively.
Yeah, it just puts the ball in harm's way. So sure, I guess you could say, well, the receiver should have done. If we keep having to say that it's the receiver's fault, and we keep coming back to this conversation, it's no longer the receiver's fault. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Limited upside in terms of offense, which is something you should be saying about a Texas team, and something you should be saying about a team that has Quinn Ewers as
Yeah.
your quarterback. So a little disappointing from my perspective.
Yeah, it was definitely disappointing, and that's not because I predicted them to win. I'm just saying, I'll take my lumps, but I'm just saying they're
Mm,
not an elite
mm,
team. If you want to go on my
no.
TikTok and comment on my video, go ahead and do that. Because I will respond back and tell you the same damn thing. They're not an elite offense. They haven't been all season long because they haven't played. They haven't won a game against a top 25 team. Just let that sink in, guys. Sorry.
Oh,
I'm
and they've
not.
looked bad in wins.
It's a rough time. It's a rough time in
Mhm.
Texas. Don't tell me that you're going to win the national championship, please, because it's not going to happen. No.
Good God, please let it be SMU though. If a Texas team wins it, please let it be SMU.
I honestly
That will
want them.
make my day.
I want them to meet up against Georgia one more time. I really do. Just for my entertainment purposes only, because they're not going to win that game. And for a Texas team, beating a team once is hard. Beating a team twice is very difficult. Beating a team 3 times is damn near impossible. But Georgia, they got Kirby Smart. They got a solid defense. And they got an offense that does just enough to win games. Well, let's go ahead and move on to Penn State and Oregon. Man, that was a late game, but I enjoyed every single bit of it. But for Penn State, a 45-37 loss to Oregon in the Big 12 or Big 10 championship game on Saturday. It really just felt like a missed opportunity. The Nittany Lions had their chance to make a national statement by beating the number 1 team for the first time since 1990. There's a stat for you, stat nerds. They could have earned the number 1 overall seed in the college football playoff and trump their rival at the game's elite table. Instead, Penn State got carved up by Oregon's offense, which it still outgained 518 to 466 and committed the game's only 2 turnovers. Turnovers. They're important, guys. Don't let it be glazed all over you, all right? The last turnover, really, you have to say it was a phenomenal interception by Nico Reed against Trey Wallace in the 4th quarter. And it effectively ended the game. But the Nittany Lions, they were often spectacular, rushing for 292 yards, just like I said in the podcast. I know I keep going back to it, but I have to point out where I'm right. In Oregon, if they have one flaw on this team is they can't stop the run. Obviously, giving up 292 yards, Penn State averaging 8.3 yards per attempt and battling back from an 18-point deficit. I mean, really, in the first half, you could have said, okay, I'm done watching because this game is over. And that's what many fans thought. But just like another game, they decided to claw themselves back. But what's different in this game is Oregon countered just enough to win the game. Now, I may have been wrong about the score because I said that this game was going to be in the low 20s, but I was not wrong about how it was going to come down to quarterback play. And for Drew Aller, who made some elite throws but also was intercepted twice, desperately wanted that ball back on that final throw of the game. He finished the game 20 for 39 for 226, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, but I hate to say it because I give full transparency here. He just wasn't good enough when it comes down to making some of the throws against the best team in the nation. You cannot afford any miscues when you're playing a team of this caliber, whether it's the regular season or the Big Ten championship game. That was a lot. So what do you got?
Yeah, I got two things here. So first of all, to everyone who's making fun of you for getting that was a high scoring or low scoring game, let me just say, so my person, so this is my X account here, the sports media X account. My actual X account is Big Ten Gabriel, and that's for a reason. So there's not a weekend during football season where I don't watch at least three Big Ten games. Okay, let me tell you, this should have been a low scoring game. This should have been more close to the to like the Oregon, nah, to like the Penn State Ohio State game. I would say that's
Yeah.
how a lot of people thought it would play out, and the fact that it didn't, it was something of a shock. So what you said prior to the game is what's expected for a high level Big Ten game. So everyone who's coming at you in the comments, I have to question if they've watched much Big Ten football. That aside, Drew Aller is someone who you don't want to necessarily have to depend on to win the game from the pocket or with his arm.
Yeah.
You know, you have a pretty good stable at running back in Penn State there. But I just want to say I was a little disappointed in Tyler Warren. I For someone who I viewed as potentially the best player on the field coming into the game,
Yeah.
I thought he had something of an off game. And was some of that on Drew Aller? Absolutely. Absolutely. But he's also been so spectacular, Warren has, in past games where it's like, oh, I'm so used to him just making those spectacular plays. And it turns out that could easily have been the difference.
Yep. I mean, Penn State they really made some errors in this game, and it wasn't all on Drew Aller. You know, some of those errors belong to the coaching staff. Franklin defended his decision to go for a 2-point conversion by 8 points in the second half, citing it as a path to winning in regulation. Franklin didn't address the play itself, a reverse option pass with tight end Tyler Warren, right? It was a crazy one. Trying to throw to Aller, Warren got caught between decisions and slipped to the ground. And then you have in the fourth quarter, Penn State running backs Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, who combined for 229 of Penn State's 292 rushing yards. They touched the ball one time apiece. Allen scored on a 1-yard touchdown run. Singleton ran for 9 yards on the play before Aller's interception. Aller was 5 for 10 for 46 yards and the interception in the fourth quarter. This is just another example of playing down to your competition. Another opportunity for Franklin to beat a top 5 team. Another example to show the world that he deserves to continue to be the head coach of Penn State. But here we are, and we're all questioning him once again. Next up is the college football playoff. And we'll see if this team can flip the script, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Not. I'm actively rooting for SMU. I don't care. James Franklin, once again, he can't get it done in the big games. So it really was a time for him to, or a chance, an opportunity for him to switch the narrative, and he definitely didn't do himself any favors there. And trying that Philly special like play didn't look great. Path to victory, goodness.
Sometimes you just got to do what's more comfortable. And I get it when you're playing, the number one team in the nation, you got to come up with some plays, but this just was not the right time for something like that. And we all saw how it developed, and plays like that, you just can't. It's you got to weigh the risk when it comes to the situation, but in this situation, in this game, yeah, I understand you want to throw it all out there, you want to leave it all out on the field, but this is just, it was too much. But that is going to be it for today's show. So, Sports Pulse, where can they find you again?
Yeah, Sports Pulse 100 on the X and Curious Sports Pulse on all of the other social media platforms. I gotta say, love the show, Ryan. Thank you, and looking forward to more of your future shows.
Oh yeah, we appreciate you coming on. It was definitely a pleasure. Um, I try to get other people to come on that wouldn't really normally be saying very much. So yeah, it was definitely a pleasure, and I hope to have you on sometime soon.
Thank you, Ryan.
But that is going to be it for today's show. Hey, before you leave, give this video a thumbs up. Can you do that, YouTubers? Can you? It really helps us pop in a big way. Everything here is free. That's all we ask of you. Leave a comment below. If you like the show, if you didn't like the show, if you want to talk shit on my facts, go ahead and leave a comment below. And if you are on podcasts on Apple or Spotify, drop us a 5-star rating and review. It does help us out tremendously. So thank you guys for doing that. Also, follow us on all your social media platforms at Hot Zone Sports and join the sports pages that is meant for you, because this is truly why we do this, for the people. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, click that notification button, and have a blessed week.